What is up, everyone, and welcome to the seventh episode of the JellyPod series. And I actually have a really interesting podcast today. I'm joined with Snooptoshi, one of the most infamous devs that has been building on the layer one of Bitcoin for many years now. He actually first got into Bitcoin all the way back in 2012. And today we're going to learn a little bit more about his journey of becoming a Bitcoin developer, the pros and cons working and developing in the Bitcoin space, and even learning about these different tools and games with the pros and cons and different challenges of all building on the layer one of Bitcoin. So super excited to have you today, Snooptoshi. Thank you for coming on. And I like to start off the sort of podcast with learning a little bit more about you and sort of your journey to getting here. So what's like the story of how you first got into crypto and then how you eventually ended up being a developer?
Thank you, first and foremost, for having me. It's great to be here and always happy to talk about some of the fun stuff we get to do in this wild and wonderful world that is Web3. Um, Crypto is an interesting one. I've been dabbling in crypto for quite some time, more as a hobbyist, as an enthusiast. I used it as a currency in the very early days. I'll say no more on that, but there was an interest when I started to realize what this was becoming. We very nearly created an exchange in about 2012. Started talking to Ripple XRP, or OpenCoin as they're called back then. They wanted us to become the first Ripple gateway, but we saw straight through that LARP as being just a bunch of bankers wearing crypto clothing and avoided them like the plague. It was a different landscape back then. Grew up in the UK, and before I left, the regulation out there was scary, and getting into a potential crypto exchange back that early, I felt would be either a tremendously lucrative thing that came with a huge amount of risk by not following some laws or regulation that may not have even been in place at the point in time, or it wouldn't go to anywhere. So it was too much of a risk, and so decided instead to turn my attention to my other passion, which has been gaming and hardware. I'm sure, like many gamers, I personally have always wanted my own games console, um, and I've been a sort of a hacker, tinkerer, developer. I like modding and tinkering with any gadget I can find my hand on to see what I can do with it that it's not really meant to do in the first place. And that's led me down a nice, fun path of R&D and focusing on emerging technologies. So when I didn't focus full time on crypto back then, I instead focused on hardware. Started building some interesting tech. Sort of claim to fame in Web2 was developing the world's first self-contained virtual reality headset. So your Oculus Quest, if you will, but about 5 or 6 years prior to anyone else coming up with that idea.
Oh, wow.
And it was a fun one. So every year from GDC, from about 2012 to about 2017, 2018, we would show a new prototype, a new product, a new device that we built with one of our partners. In 2015, I think we showed off the first 2.5K VR headset. In 2016, we showed off a headset that we built with NVIDIA and with Valve that was very similar to the Apple Vision Pro. Here, I've got a little video I can show you. Yeah. See if I can do a screen share. So this was the Game Developers Conference in GDC in 2015, so quite some time ago. This is the founder of Oculus, a chap called Palmer Luckey, and this was about 3 years before the Oculus Go came out, the first self-contained headset from Facebook. Now you can see him using finger tracking that we had on a headset, which admittedly was quite bulky. You can see the battery pack is attached here to my pocket. You could unscrew the battery pack to then be able to plug it into a PC to use Steam VR, or use it, plug it into a battery as a self-contained headset, where at least the battery power wasn't weighed on your face. The strap went left to right, the ratchet system was all there. So really, it was years ahead of its time. This was about 2015. But even back then, we realized that consumers and developers do not want to wear anything above 100 grams on their face for any long duration of time. And so we carried on iterating. And we built another one or two prototypes with Samsung. We built a product with Mattel before we realized that the future of XR has got some serious problems. And it's all to do with data, it's all to do with control, it's all to do with sort of centralization. And it's a bit of a shame because the analytics and the data you can get from XR is tremendously valuable. Facebook are able to tell within seconds that if the person who's picked up and wearing the headset is a true owner, just based on how that headset has been worn. So it's that sort of analytical information. And this is even before we get things like foveated rendering, which is just constant eye tracking and just very scary things that when you imagine that your kids are going to be the ones using these things for any long durations of time, that's some scary profiling that can be happening on kids at a very young age. That it's just an Orwellian future that I'm not very much of a fan of. So there's a dark side of this. Now, the light side, of course, is again, like technology moves forward nonetheless, and the consumers will always get the product that they deserve. So to me, the product that will cross the chasm for XR is a lightweight headset that weighs 100 grams or less, that has the compute power somewhere else. So where we hadn't filed any IP previously for the headsets, because again, they were great prototypes, but we felt they're simply too heavy to bring to market, we then went back into stealth. And for 4 years, we started working with a company called Surface Inc. and partnered officially with NVIDIA. We have the only license with NVIDIA to build a consumer product using their AI chips running the Android baseboard. And so with that, instead of building a headset that had the computer inside, we took the computer out, just like we did the battery, and we built it into what we call a display agnostic wearable. A bit of a mouthful, but I can give you another screen share here just to give you a little preview into what this thing is here. So I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Can you try it again, actually?
Oh,
I
yes,
accidentally
indeed.
clicked the wrong button.
No problems at all. Let me give that another screen share.
Okay,
So,
show on screen. Okay, there we go.
okay, fantastic. So the device itself has been designed with a company called Surface Inc., who are one of our partners, who are better known for designing products with Apple, like the iPhone, MacBook Pro, fucking iPhone, everything in between. Absolute rock stars when it comes to Silicon Valley Design House. And it's with them that we designed this modular desktop PC, effectively a computer that is powerful enough to be used as a desktop, yet small, portable, and light enough to be worn in a bag or in your pocket. So who you can see here, that's the head of AR for Meta. Previously, you saw some of the heads of XR for Sony. And what we're looking at here are different XR headsets, AR displays plugged into the computer that are looking at all sorts of wondrous things. In this instance, you're looking at three-dimensional worlds that appear almost like a Harry Potter picture frame, if you will. You can kind of see, as I put the glasses in front of the camera, what you're seeing, which is almost like a 3D window into a 3D world. A precursor to the holodeck, if you're familiar with Star Trek. So very cool tech. And those glasses are just one pair of glasses that we support. Now, that is the consumer product. The developer kit is something we just came back from from CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, where we showcased this for the first time. Now, this is a factory-tooled product that we built with NVIDIA that is ready to go to developers. It is a dev kit, so it's not as pretty as the consumer product I just showed you, but it is fully functioning. And I'd love to show you just how this thing can be used, because this, in my opinion, is a revolutionary piece of technology. We currently have the console plugged into a 4K TV playing Call of Duty Black Ops 6 over a mobile phone hotspot at a conference, which again is damn impressive stuff. This is a multiplayer game, as you can see, being played with some decoupled controllers. The reason we have decoupled controllers is because while the console is currently plugged into the television, I'm about to do something pretty cool here. We can take a few different things. Now, we have many peripherals that this portable desktop computer can plug into. I'm about to plug in an HDMI, a full HD HDMI touchscreen, higher resolution than the Steam Deck, that will now mirror what you can see on the screen. Without us leaving the game, without us even pausing the game, we now have our Call of Duty running on both the TV and the screen, but we can simply unplug in a hot swappable way the television to be left with a console with a magnetic screen. Now, this is where the decoupled controllers come in, because you slide them on and all of a sudden we now have a turbocharged Nintendo Switch that is orders of magnitude more powerful, running some pretty cool content. Now, This device is effectively, again, a Swiss Army knife for developers, because not only can it run Android content or cloud delivered Windows content, but it can also run Linux, and it can power anything you want to plug it into, be it a TV, a monitor, the touchscreen, as you can see here, or what I'm about to do, which is my personal favorite, is plug into another one of our partners' augmented reality glasses. So the glasses that you can see on the table are made by Xreal, the Xreal One Pros, really awesome glasses, probably my favorite AR glasses on the market, that are very lightweight, incredibly high resolution. And as you can see, I'm about to now plug it into the glasses and show you what you can see when looking through these glasses, which again is like an ultra widescreen Call of Duty, almost a virtual reality feel of that wide field of view without the big cumbersome headset in any bulky weight on your head that's going to get awkward. And I've worn these things for hours and hours at a time. So this is the direction the industry needs to move in, where XR needs to get smaller and lighter headsets, and the content needs to get better suited for these sorts of experiences. So this is what we call the Curve Developer Kit, which we're now bringing to market, and it is a Web3 device. And what I mean by that is within the console, I'm just going to plug it back in. I mean, if you're not interested in gaming or computing, you can use it like a normal set-top box, like an Android TV box or sort of your Netflix, your sort of traditional TV-based apps. But what we do have is Ordos. And Ordos is something I'll show you in a moment, which is an operating system we've inscribed onto Bitcoin. So there are many things I could dig into here. Before I just keep talking,
Yeah, dude, I was like, dude, I was not expecting all of this. So basically, you were one of the first people that developed what we now know today as like VR headsets. Like
correct. The all-in-one VR headset. So I met up with Palmer Luckey back in about 2012, before the Oculus Rift became a thing, and I saw a very early version that was a cannibalized tablet that was plugged into a PC. And I asked Palmer why he'd taken the SoC, why he'd taken the chip out of the tablet in order to build this thing. And he said to me quite honestly, because I want to play my PC games in VR. I'm not interested in mobile centric. But I realized that the future of XR was going to be ARM based. And at that point, I already had a relationship with NVIDIA. And so I went into Jensen and convinced him to give me access to Jensen, sorry, the CEO of NVIDIA, and convinced him to give me access to a reference design to what was called the Shield tablet. And that Shield tablet was the device that we reconfigured into the headset that I showed you in the beginning of the video that had the decoupled battery. And that was the first headset that really moved weight away from the headset. That was a big leap forwards, and something that we've now seen Apple bring to market years later. So it was definitely great prototyping, but to me, the shortcomings were too great to try and productize that. We knew developers would just wear it for 20 minutes at a time and put it in a drawer and it would collect dust. And lo and behold, we've seen that happen with every self-contained solution. They have a nice novelty factor, but the stickiness, the ability to wear them all day at work, it's not there. We're just not there yet. And we can't be there for as long as people decide to keep embedding the compute inside the display. But why do they do that? Well, the moment you take the compute out of the display, some individual like me is going to come and build an open source device that is capable of plugging into any display, and then they're just a display manufacturer. And that's a race to the bottom. So there's no interest in them for that. So they want to get hold of the analytics. They want that app store. They want that ecosystem. And unfortunately, the consumers end up with a subpar product, which is far too weighty. But, they don't know what they don't know. As Henry Ford once said, you ask people what they want, they'll tell you faster horses. Ultimately, until people see what the better alternative is, they're not going to know that there is a better alternative. Why? Well, because the smartest, best, greatest companies in the world are making these products. Therefore, that has to be the best solution. But it's not. So yeah, this is again, I ramble quite a bit, but this is where XR has some serious teething problems. It is really the hardware level, the lack of standardization, and the dragging of the feet by certain larger entities to be able to support and embrace wholeheartedly this kind of tech. But nonetheless, I am a believer. I think XR, which is incidentally for anyone who's listening, XR extended reality is the umbrella term for both virtual and augmented reality and any of the other realities that are going to fall into that. If you say XR, it basically means anything like that, any headset you put on your face. Um, so those display technologies need to get smaller, they need to get cheaper, they need to get lighter, and we're beginning to see that happening. We're beginning to see companies out there realizing, well, fuck it, I can't compete with the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, but I can make a really lightweight pair of glasses with a really high resolution display and sell it really cheaply. So fantastic. There'll be someone else that'll make a device that can power it, be it a laptop, a PC, a phone, or a custom built device such as ours that is built to power XR displays, given it has a hot swappable battery and all of this other fun stuff. So that is like the way that this space, I believe, will move forwards. I think we'll see countless other companies realizing we need to take the weight out of the headset. We need to make something wearable. We need to let people use it in a way that they want to, because we have a fragmented ecosystem. You look around your house, you've got a Nintendo Switch, you've got an Xbox, you've got a PC, you've got all of these separate devices, you've got your Oculus, then you've got your Vive, you've got all of these different things that unfortunately all need their own dedicated compute power. And it's unnecessary when you can literally just have one open source device that can plug into everything. So really, that's our ethos, is building this Swiss Army knife that is open and available. And that's on the Web 2 side. I mean, that really targets AI and XR. It doesn't even touch the Bitcoin, which we can go into in a minute.
Yeah, dude, I was gonna say, what's really funny? So I remember when the Oculus Quest first came out, where you had to plug it into the computer and you had to have sensors like all around the room. And I completely
K2.
agree on what you were saying about like the weight of it, right? Because I think you wear it for an hour or something like that, your neck starts hurting and your head starts hurting. And I know over time they've kind of improved the headset a little bit. Like you didn't need the sensors and you didn't need the computer, but it was still kind of like that bulky, heavy aspect. With your guys' product, it's called Curve Reality, correct?
Curve reality is, yeah. I mean, we call it curve for short because the form factor for
Curve.
the device, but yeah.
Yeah, so Curve. So this is sort of sort of your web 2 route, like getting back to kind of your journey. You
Indeed.
got into crypto pretty early. You use Bitcoin as, more so a currency of buying and selling stuff early on. And then around, I believe you said 2015 was when you started messing with this sort of VR, XR sort of concept. You made some connections with NVIDIA, you got some different licensing type agreements. And then over time with Curve, you've now tried to reduce the form size to where now with glasses, you can plug those glasses into a hardware device. And now you can play games like Call of Duty. There can be different benefits in the workplace, stuff like that. So that's kind of like the Web 2 journey you've had.
Precisely right. And that was the product we were building. As I said, this has been many years in development. Now, a couple of years ago, when ordinal theory and the Taproot upgrade, two very significant advancements in the Bitcoin ecosystem, took place, that's when I really started to get excited, because we all knew the shortcomings of the sort of digital assets on previous chains, and I won't go into that now. But ultimately, the future, at least certainly for this cycle, and I believe for all cycles to come, is going to be dominated by Bitcoin. And for those again who don't know, the Taproot upgrade a couple of years ago happened, which effectively allowed you to append information to Satoshis. A Satoshi being the base denomination of a Bitcoin. You have 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin, and you will only ever have 21 million Bitcoin. And it will take until the year 2140 to be able to get all of those Bitcoin, and they will be mined at a constant rate of on average 1 block per 10 minutes. So every 4 years, the amount of rewards you get paid out cuts in half. And so it's been planned out in quite a clever way by someone or some people known as Satoshi Nakamoto, in a way that was built to have digital scarcity that wouldn't allow the banks and the reasons for the 2008 crash to happen again, where there is an on-chain visibility, there is transparency, there is non-fungibility, there is all of the benefits that we can't necessarily see in the real world of fiat today. And so it's taken 15 years for Bitcoin to become one in the top 10 assets. I think we've surpassed the market cap of silver last I checked anyway. And that's not a very long time to do the things that it's done. So Bitcoin has always been an incredible store of value, but this Taproot upgrade started to open up new potential. It was one part of the puzzle. The second part of the puzzle was something called ordinal theory. And ordinal theory is, I mean, ordinal theory it's counting, it's numbering, it's a numbering system. But Casey Roddenmore came up with the numbering system for Satoshis. So effectively, what you now have is the ability to store data somewhere immutably for the rest of time, almost like you're scratching something into a coin that will remain in circulation forever. And then you have the ability to identify where and which coin it is. So those two things, when combined, are fascinating because yes, you can use them for like NFT type things. People call them ordinals, Bitcoin ordinals, or the public will probably call them Bitcoin NFTs. But they are so much more than that because these things are now around for as long as Bitcoin are going to be around for. But unlike normal traditional digital assets that you might have a picture, this thing has the ability to run code. You have to remember that every time you're looking
Hmm.
at an ordinal or an NFT, you're looking at it on a computer in a browser in some way, shape, or form. So when you have this little thing, I like to think of a Satoshi with like ordinal theory, almost treating each Satoshi like a floppy disk. There's only a finite amount of space. You can only fit 350 kilobytes onto each one, but it will remain there for the rest of time and anyone can access it. And so to me, that was the birth of the first decentralized hard drives, the first persistent hard drive that will last longer than any of us. But the issue lies therein is that, hang on a minute, how do I browse this hard drive? And again, this is what I mean, the cyclical nature of technology. Let's go back 30 years to before the advent of the operating system. There were computers, yes, but you needed to know command line programming to be able to use them in any way, shape, or form. It had no way been democratized. And then the operating system came out, and it allowed people to use a mouse and a keyboard and use a computer in an intuitive way. It became a window and it opened up this technology to the entire world. It removed the friction needed, the technical knowledge needed to operate a computer. And then the similarities that I started to see with the evolution of ordinal theory, and then with the introduction of something called the Rune Meta Protocol, which was the second piece of technology that the inventor of ordinal theory came out with, which is a more efficient way of doing something called UTXO management. I won't get into the weeds of it all, but just a very clever way of doing some more efficient ways of transferring, um, let's say, a different kind of asset. It was, again, another huge leap forward. These are all foundational building blocks that other people are able to now build upon. And so the Room Meta Protocol came out again 2+ years ago and is another huge leap forward for the space that opens up effectively, and I hate to say it for lack of a better word, shitcoins on Bitcoin. And that was a really, really interesting notion because people want to be able to trade. Ever since we saw the craze of 2021, people like the idea of being able to do sort of the degenerate casino, sort of online casino world that is known in Web3. And runes were the next step towards doing that. But there are always limitations with Bitcoin. There are 10-minute block times. It's expensive to put data on there. There are things that are very hard to work around when you're working specifically with layer one. And you need to have that level of knowledge, of understanding to be able to put the data on there and then access the data. Otherwise, the only way you can do it is going to marketplaces to see what's been added, going to indexing sites that aren't really built to handle massive amounts of HTML code and the sorts of things that are now being inscribed. So it's really fascinating to see we now have this new medium. We now have this Goldilocks period of time where until Bitcoin gets way too expensive, anyone is able to put something somewhere once for anyone to see for the rest of time. And yes, there are limitations. Yes, fine, 350 kilobytes is a very small amount of data today. But how much data was that 20 years ago? Think of some of your favorite
Yeah.
childhood games. Think of The Legend of Zelda. That's 250 kilobytes. You could fit that. I'm not suggesting anyone does. That's highly illegal. But in theory, one could build a game as awesome as The Legend of Zelda and inscribe it on a SAT. And rather than put it on an app store
That's
where they then need to
crazy.
maintain it, exactly, you now basically have this ability to have games on chain for the rest of time. But again, what good is that if you don't know how to find them? If you can't access them, if it's through centralized marketplaces and indexing websites. So this is where that next piece comes in, the Bitcoin operating system. Much like back in the 80s, the introduction of the OS democratized the computing for everyone. Ordos is being positioned to democratize accessing, putting data on, and reading data that is on Bitcoin. So I'll do yet another screen share. Bear with me one moment.
Let's do it. I'm loving dude, I'm loving this, by the way, because I'm finding this super fascinating. Just real quick,
Okay,
as you screen share this, if
of
someone
course.
did upload Zelda to that one sat, would people actually be able to play the game?
Well, this is the thing. Yes, and if you knew the SAT that it went on, the inscription ID, then yes, you would. And so I'll
You could actually play the game. Wow, that's great. I did not know that.
let me show you a thing or two here. This is pretty cool stuff. So this is an operating system that has been fully inscribed onto Bitcoin. It's an 8 megabyte OS, so it costs an arm and a leg to put on here. But now it's on here, it's here forever. It can never be taken down. It can never be changed, provided you know how to access it. Now, it's a cool little platform because ultimately it looks like a nostalgic operating system. But as you can see in the top left, we have ordinals. And within ordinals, as you'd imagine, my documents, again, trying to abstract the complexity, we have our video, our audio, our games, our images, because I mean, that makes sense. Our images, I mean, because this is a communal hard drive, anyone can store data on. So here we basically have inscription 0, which was the very first inscription ever made. Here we have some cool sort of gen art you can sort of mess around with and sort of interact with, because again, you can do clever generative art on Bitcoin, on ordinals that you could never do on traditional NFTs. We have some interesting games that you can play with one another. We have something we call BitChat. We have emulators galore, so PlayStation emulators. I need to find a ROM. Let me just see if I can find something. Here we go. So let me just drag this over here. So I'm going to open Castlevania up. So now we can play Castlevania, provided you have that game stored locally on your computer in a browser that is running fully on chain. And this is, again, a dynamic OS. This isn't like a shitty sort of fake OS. This is literally a full-on real operating system that you can you can play PlayStation
So this
games.
is on the layer one of this is like it. So you need to still have this game downloaded to your computer? Like, is this game like on the blockchain? Like, how does that work?
Castlevania, yes, that is on my computer because I own that game. I'm going to share this. I don't know if you can see the address bar while I'm sharing this, but if you go to btc.ordos.io, that's going to take you directly to the ordinal itself, to the literal inscription, to the Satoshi that is running all of this. And within here, you can see if I could go to, let's say, the Nintendo Entertainment System, we do have a bunch of games that we have inscribed because these are freeware games. They're open source games that are free to distribute and quite fun to play. So these are all literally on chain. Let me just do myself. Where you can literally just sort of load them up, play them on your phone. If you play them on the phone, you get touchscreen controls. You can full screen them. You can move it. You can have as many things on here as you like. Now, this is just the gaming side. But we've been putting applications on chain as well. So, for instance, we have Winamp, applications that I grew up with and I love. We've even inscribed various skins, so you can have the nostalgic skins that you probably know and love. Applications, programs that we think might be helpful, 3JS code editors, anything that might be helpful for developers to not have to necessarily pay for. Right? Don't want to have to pay for Blender to download and install Blender. Great. Well, here's a 3D model editor, so just fucking come and do it here. So the idea here is build something that is going to last the rest of time, but most importantly, can be used by anyone as their own computer. And what I mean by that is I'm going to show you something pretty cool. I'm going to open up yet another tab. And I'm going to show you a collection that is inscribed onto Bitcoin. So right here, we're going to just find one of these. Each one of these are games that have been inscribed onto an individual Satoshi. And these Satoshis themselves have what are called inscription IDs right down here. So we can take this inscription ID and we can go back into Ordos and we can right click and we can go to install ordinal. And we simply paste in that inscription ID. And that's going to bring in a new file. So we call it blockout. I'll just call it block for now. And we click save. Now that's brought the game here. And if we go back into the start menus, we now have block. It's now been added to the start menu. But it gets really cool because we can restart this. I can exit it altogether and come back. And lo and behold, I come back in here and I go to ordinals, block will still remain because this is only cached locally in your computer. Data will never leave here unless you pay for it to be put onto Bitcoin. And I can take you down an even further rabbit hole, something I like to call recursive inception, where oh, computer just crashed. I'm putting it through too much.
So real quick to explain this a little bit more, this web like just to clarify, so this website you built and essentially what you've done is you've created a bunch of different or you've sourced either you created or you found and you sourced it on your website different tools and different games that are actually inscribed to satoshis of Bitcoin, and as long as it's less than 350 kilobytes you can have it permanently on chain. It can never be manipulated. And then essentially, any user can come along onto this site and you're helping them find these satoshis. It's almost like a directory in a way where now they can actually play these different games that have been created and have been inscribed to Bitcoin. But what's also interesting is individuals can go on here, and because all of that information and sort of memory of what they're doing on the site is locally stored, they can kind of search different satoshis and upload them. And some of these satoshis, like the one that you just brought up, was a game that people can actually play. And this is all on Bitcoin forever. So it's like
Precisely
what you had
right.
said a little bit earlier, it's immutable, decentralized storage. So, like, no
Exactly
one
right.
can kind of mess with that storage. And essentially, what you've done is just made it easier for people to be able to interact and find these different Satoshis that have these unique tools or games attached to them.
You've hit the nail on the head. As the co-creators of Ordinals said, when they saw the operating system, something just clicked that this is the way that Ordinals were meant to be seen. Because with Ordinal theory, it's an evolving landscape. Because creatives, okay, let me back up. There's a thing called recursion, which is a very powerful upgrade to all of Bitcoin. Because ultimately, what it means is when you put data on Bitcoin once, you don't need to put that same data on Bitcoin again. You can simply refer to it. So people have been going out of their way to put very complex libraries onto Bitcoin, things like 3JS and P5JS and WebXR, which means these large code bases that would normally be very costly to put onto Bitcoin are now on there for anyone to use. So you simply just have to point to them and say, look at that code over there, instead of look at a content delivery network on another website, and it will always be there. So the complexity of the ordinals is growing every day because more complex and sophisticated libraries and types of ordinals are getting built. But unfortunately, a lot of the websites don't run them natively. They're running them in little iframes in browsers and things that just don't really handle. If you see a collection of 1,000 of these things all at once, it's going to grind your computer to a halt. So this is the sort of sticking point. And so when you have something that can render everything using WebAssembly, using sort of all of the fun tools and text that we have built into Ordos, then things operate more smoothly. You can resize screens, you can have emulation running, you can have videos running and audio running, and all these things running in parallel that's using your computer's local resources in a way that it's sort of running a local OS, but with the benefit that it's not taking any info. It's not sending it off to anyone. It's not sort of peering into your private life, and it's giving you access to the tools that you probably might need on a day-to-day basis. So it's to me, this is like a time capsule of an operating system that we can continue to upgrade. Because while data on Bitcoin is immutable, this recursive nature and what are called parent-child, this ability to be able to link together these 350 kilobyte chunks means you can always update, you can always append more information. And the way we've written this operating system effectively says always look for the latest child of any Satoshi, of any inscription. So we can simply take a SAT that we put one version of an app on, we can update that version of the app as a child to that same SAT, and then the whole operating system updates because it's always looking for that latest version. So you have sort of version, it's really, it's fascinating. And so what we're trying to do here is show people a way of not only looking at content on Bitcoin, but also adding content onto Bitcoin, where again, we abstract away a lot of the complexity that they simply don't need to know about, that we need to know about now because, hey, we're so early. But sooner or later, when we remove that friction, everyone else doesn't need to know what inscribe means, knows what the rune meta protocol means. All they need to know is, hey, I can spend some money and have a document here for the rest of the time. And that's something that a lot of people might want to do.
And so going off that, because you said we're early to this whole thing, where do you think this is going? right? Because I remember I think ordinals came out a little bit over 2 years ago, runes maybe a year, almost a year ago now. There's constantly one of the things I've realized with Bitcoin is there's constantly new tech and new innovations coming out where now all of a sudden we're seeing things that previously most people didn't think were possible, right? So where do you personally see all of this going? Um, yeah, like I'm very curious. Like where do you think this is actually heading in sort of the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, and potentially even in the longer, 50
Yeah.
years?
I mean, you've got to think Bitcoin's 15, 16 years old. It's still a very new technology when you consider how old YouTube is and how old Google is and how old Yahoo is and all of these other behemoths that are still knocking around today. So to me, we are in its absolute infancy because it's only been a year since the Rune Meta Protocol came out. And by design, it's not meant to really be used by everyone for another cycle, in my personal opinion. I know that people probably grumble at me for saying that, but I think the creator designed it in that way. Won't go into the boring reasons why, but just that's my take. Um, and of course, Bitcoin, Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It is always supreme. It is secure. It's safe. It's decentralized. It is everything that you want a blockchain to be. It may not be fast, but what you sacrifice when you add speed is security, is centralization, things that you really don't want to compromise on when you have a blockchain. So this is why Bitcoin always will reign supreme. There is no way for you to get these three pillars as well as Bitcoin has been able to. So to me, what we're going to see is a continued pace of development of ways of using Bitcoin. Like we've had 15, 16 years to see Bitcoin as a store of value. And if people haven't understood that by now, they're probably not going to. But as we saw with NFTs, there was a lot of people out there who didn't care about ETH until you could buy an NFT. And all of a sudden, that was the driving force for them to buy ETH. And if that's not Satoshi's vision, which is again for the whole world to actually have some sats, so that this is this greatest opportunity of wealth distribution the world's ever seen, and it's not just going from the Rothschilds to the sailors, we actually have an opportunity here to make a difference and to be a part of something bigger. So to me, this is why Bitcoin is so important because Bitcoin will always be the store of value. But if you can start doing other things with Bitcoin, using it as a currency, using it as a medium of creativity, of a medium of storage, of data, of whatever, that could be the thing that brings on the next 5, 10, 15 million users that weren't interested in Bitcoin as a store of value. So like, I think it's impossible to say what's going to happen because this tech space advances so quickly. And it does need to tread carefully because, again, you can't just add upgrades willy nilly and hope everything's fine because with each upgrade does open up severe, severe risks, which is why there's a whole consortium to make sure that what gets added in a proper way. So it's again, I hate to be so bloody cliche, but it is early. I mean, Bitcoin, yeah, not as early. It's the oldest of the blockchains, so to speak, but ordinal theory, the root meta protocol, these ways of using Bitcoin outside of the store of value are the things that I'm really fascinated in.
And how do you think they'll be used, I guess? Like, how do you envision runes or ordinals or these different things can be used? Because there are some different inefficiencies that you had brought up previously. Okay, you have the 10-minute block times, you have this sort of KB limit. You don't have the ability to have smart contracts unless there's some sauce that that I don't know. Uh,
No, no, you're spot
yeah,
on.
like what yeah, like,
So,
what do you think, like, what are some of the things that this can be used for, I guess?
so I'll give you a great example. There's a collection called the Octoglyphs. The Octoglyphs is a lovely collection where we have it's a 10K PFP collection, but the PFPs aren't PFPs. They're runes that have art etched to the rune. And those 10K runes are all children of one parent rune, which also has its own token supply. And this is the first and only collection ever on Bitcoin to do this. And there was some obscene technical hurdles to overcome to be able to do this. There were over 400 blocks with over 20 odd runes per block for over a week to be able to get a collection of this size, each tied to the same shared single parent. And that sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but the reality is it was quite a feat to be able to do. Now, ultimately, what that left with is a parent with a rune supply and children with rune supplies. That's a two-token economy. This is the beginnings of DeFi on Bitcoin without any smart contracts, using purely on-chain data. And what octoglyphs do is they monitor buy, list, transfer, sale activity across all marketplaces or on-chain to see what's happening. And depending on the actions of the holders, determines the rate in which these little creatures are able to passively mine their own token supply. A token supply that they can then swap, almost like an in-game currency, for an out-of-game currency, for a real-world currency that they can in turn use for exchanging for goods and services, if you will. So that whole two-token economy can still be achieved without the need of smart contracts by using pure layer one data, but it's just an entirely different way of skinning that cat. And this is what I mean. Anything is really possible on layer one within reason. You just have to be creative about it. And necessity is the driver of innovation. And so to me, it's not, yo, it's a shame there's a 10-minute block time. It's like, great, I've got 10 minutes on average. What can we do in that 10 minutes that's slightly interesting and unique and novel and is going to capture the attention of people before the next block? And again, I can't tell you what that is. That killer app hasn't been built. But what we started to see are things like mempool sniping, which gradually then became a mempool auction, which is just a nicer way of democratizing the access to these technologies to be able to pinch other people's purchases from the pending block that's about to mine. And if you want to try and snipe it back, then you can try and snipe it back. And it's basically a bit of a PvP auction because you don't know when that block's going to clear, and you hope you're the one that has it by the time it happens. So it was this mempool sniping, just a thing that a few select people knew how to do, but then the tools became democratized, and then anyone could go to a website and snipe something. And you see these sniping battles when you have like these 50, 60-minute blocks, and there's a popular ordinal out there that was being like fat fingered and sold too cheap. You just see these people sniping each other and sniping it back and forwards and back and forwards and back and forwards. It's the funniest thing to watch. So yeah, I don't even know what the question was anymore, in all honesty.
Yeah, just like where you saw some of this going. No, that's really interesting. You were like your point of Bitcoin is reimagining the process of which things are done, where you're saying, hey, we can still go from A to B. We're just going a completely different route than what most people are thinking.
Mhm.
Now that's kind of interesting. And as far as you as a developer, what sort of attracted you to getting into this Bitcoin space more? Like, what made you want to develop these things on Bitcoin? There's a lot of different chains out there. Like, what really attracted you to building on the layer one here?
Well, this then brings me back to the hardware. So when I saw the kind of builders, the kind of developers and content creators that were flocking towards initially the Web3 space across other chains, but then the talent, the real talent, I noticed going and started focusing their attentions on Bitcoin. At around the same time, we're about to release a developer kit. So I realized this is why I need to focus my attention here, because these are the people that I want to be able to deliver my hardware to. And so this is all effectively the way to find the best content creators and developers who are interested in emerging technology. Because again, I've managed to avoid VC funding for 12 years, which means I'm able to build the product that I believe the consumers want because it's the product that I want. And it's allowed me to take my time to be able to build something that is actually worthy, I think, of being a releasable product. Much like the headsets I didn't feel were, this product I do feel is actually the thing that will add value to a number of different people's lives. So by having this very small concentrated group that then had the added bonus that the way you can foster community in Web3 outranks any marketing, any kind of fostering of community in Web 2. Some of the best tech I know and tech builders I know out there have like 6 to 7 followers. And then you'll see a project come and drop a little 100 piece free mint, and they've got like 10,000 followers overnight, and they're real people engaging and doing things that any Web 2 company would pay tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for. And so to me, if there's a model that I can prove that you can bring a product to market entirely through Web3 without needing the usual funding, let's say, and bits and pieces that you would get with VCs, then the world's going to be a better place. We're going to see more innovators being able to build products that are more in line with their ethos and what they want to build than anything else. And yes, I mean, to me, this is why I was attracted to Bitcoin. It means I can keep funding stuff myself. I can keep working with cool developers and find other like individuals that share my sort of common goals and beliefs and work with them to build cool and interesting stuff.
I love that, man. And kind of in your developer journey, what do you think are some of the difficulties you run into trying to develop on Bitcoin? And what do you think some of the positive aspects of developing on Bitcoin are?
I mean, the negative aspects, I suppose, immutability is terrifying because again, once you put something on Bitcoin, there's
You
no
can't
taking
change
back. You
it.
don't change
Yeah.
it. Exactly, it's there for all time, and especially when you're dealing with what are called rare Sats, effectively Satoshis that have certain historical significance. Excuse me, my lovely baby's just come home. Hello, baby. Then it gets even more terrifying because the last thing you want to do is make a mistake that is then visible on something that has extreme digital scarce value, and you can never change it. So that is the downfall. Not a downfall, but that is the one thing that is absolutely terrifying. I've never done a collection. I've never been involved with any inscriptions that you're not sweating it the moment you get that inscribed, because again, there's no undo button. It's done. Once it's done, it's done. And if you don't realize what's in the number, you can't bring it back. You're in a lot of trouble. Well, not necessarily trouble, but you've ruined a special sat. So that's the scary thing about it. The awesome thing about it is this is the land of untold opportunities. This is the latest frontier for technology. There's so much that needs to be built, that can now be built by so many different people, by musicians, by I'll give a shout out to some individuals, some gentlemen, Hathbanger and Bunzi and Rare Skrilla in the Bitcoin space, who've been building something called the Beatblocks protocol, which is some of the most mind-blowing use of Bitcoin and music I've ever seen, because music never found its home on other chains. But what these individuals have done, these musicians, these developers, these absolute giga chads, is again going back to recursion. Music is very repetitive. You get the same beats, the same bars over and over again. So when you're listening to an MP3, why on earth are we listening to the same sounds looping over and over again when you can literally just have, let's say, a small file that says, hey, all of these sounds should be played in this order this many times, and you get that same song. So they've built this whole protocol they've now opened up to musicians that, again, is just like another great addition to the space that means now musicians can start doing really clever stuff on Bitcoin. And so game developers, I believe, I think the indie game development world is going to adore ordinal theory when they wrap their head around it. Because look, if you want to make a little game and you put it on the Google Play Store, you got to pay like, I don't know, $100, whatever it is, to get on the Google Play Store. And then you got to keep your subscription going every year. And then you got to update stuff. And if it's not updated, it's not going to work on other versions of Android. And then you got the same with iOS. And it's a bit of a pain because you release a game, you can't just leave it there and 5 years later it's still going to be working. It's going to be gone. But if you make a cool game and you put it on Bitcoin, and that 350 kilobyte limitation is only a limitation per file size, nothing stops you linking together as many files as you want. So, like the PlayStation emulator, a lot of the applications we have on there are much larger than 350 kilobytes, but we just split them across multiple sats and then we recombine them before piping them through to the OS. So there are clever ways you can work around that, but nonetheless, there's a lot of cool kids out there that can do a lot of very cool code in 350 kilobytes when they know they've got 3JF, they've got WebXR, they've got all these libraries that is just going to take up one line of code, leaving them all of the other space to do whatever it is they want to. So to me, that's a powerful thing, like having apps on sats, I like to call them, effectively an app store for content that has been inscribed immutably, that is always going to be in your wallet for the rest of time, playable on a sat. So God forbid anything bad happens, this thing is still at its face value has the value of one sat, which is why we love doing free mint so much. We have a collection called Sattributes that only does free mints. Like our ethos is we give ordinals to good people in Web3. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now to, again, find the best developers and bring them in and start giving them access to developer kits and tools and tech that we've been working on.
Wow. Dude, when we were talking on messages, you said we were gonna go down a whole rabbit hole, and I wasn't expecting all of this. This is super fascinating. What's funny is there are so many different niches in crypto, like in all of these different blockchains and like certain NFTs on blockchains and meme coins. Bitcoin to me feels like the ultimate undiscovered playground of we have no idea what's going to come next, what's actually going to be developed. It's like this like this unexplored frontier, and there's so few people that know about it still. I mean, and you were talking about in the grand scheme of things, like Bitcoin being 15, 16 years old, whatever, isn't that long of a time. And it's the same sort of mindset even exemplified with runes and ordinals that have only been around. I think ordinal is only a little over 2 years ago now. So it's just insane. I'm excited to see where it goes and what's able to get developed. And like you said, who knows what's actually possible. And I think that in going back to why you decided to build on Bitcoin, it's like the Bitcoin development scene attracts a very certain type of individual that not only believes in the core values of Bitcoin, but is also into this sort of unique aspect of development and, exploring new capabilities. And I think that probably does lend you like a pretty cool network of people that you've ended up meeting through these different things that you've built. I mean, even right now, like you being on this podcast was simply because other people told me, oh my God, you got to have this guy on. Like he's developed so many cool things. And it's funny that you brought up beat blocks too, because I actually have them on tomorrow. And
Oh,
I've been talking
amazing.
to their, yeah, I have them on tomorrow to talk about what they're doing. I've been talking to, let me see, beat
Well,
blocks.
please
His
let
name
them know
is
how much.
Halfbanger.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Halfbanger, lovely. Please let them know how
Yeah,
much
yeah.
I adore what they're doing. I mean, I've already told them firsthand. They know how much I love what they're doing, but they are literally moving this
I'll let
space
them know
forwards light
again.
years. Yeah, they are. They're good
Yeah.
devs building good tech.
Yeah, no, we're having them on tomorrow because I'm curious about it as well. Now, we
Oh,
are
amazing.
nearing 1 hour here. I
Mm.
I do wanna talk about your PFP here, the Bitcoin Shroom. Can you talk to people that don't know about it, like, why you picked this PFP? Because, it's literally worth, like, $65,000 or something crazy. It's like point 0.8 Bitcoin. Why is it so
Don't remind
much,
me.
and why do you have one?
So my company is called Curve, and as you can see, I have a nice curve on the shroom. So the creator of the collection, Snooptoshi, had reserved it for me specifically after he saw a game that I'd made on Bitcoin block out. In fact, that same game I showed earlier on, he loved it, and so we sort of had a little one-on-one, and he gave me access to one at a nice discount, let's just say. Provided I use it at some point in time as a parent to something interesting that I'm going to build. Now, parent-child is the Bitcoin way of proving provenance. You can effectively have a linkage on chain for all time to show that one thing is linked to the other, and that can never be changed. So it's a nice way of showing provenance where you don't have to rely on a centralized marketplace to say, hey, this is a collection, because you can look on chain, you can see, let's say, the artist logo, and then underneath that artist logo, you're having all of their collections, and underneath those collections, you can have all of the artworks within. So it's a nice way of having this on-chain provenance. So the Bitcoin Shroom collection itself is, while not parent-child, a very interesting collection because Ordinals, again, is still young, a couple of years old, but this was the first collection on Bitcoin. So we're inscription number, crikey, I don't even know. Let's have a look at where we're at now. 88 million. We're nearly at sort of 89
Oh,
million
wow.
inscriptions. So quite a few have been put on there, but this one is inscription number, I think, 800 thereabouts. So it's very, very early. It's one of the sub 1Ks. And the entire Bitcoin Shroom collection is a 210 piece collection. Each individual shroom tells a piece of Bitcoin history in some way, shape, or form. And it's a fun rabbit hole to go down because it teaches you a huge amount about ordinal theory, about Bitcoin, about the history of this entire space, everything from mining to law to characters. Just it's a really wonderful collection that you can see had a huge amount of time, energy, and intent put behind it. At a point in time where people were putting pictures of like random memes and screenshots online, there's this one chap, Snooptoshi, who took the time and effort to go ahead and actually do something that is now considered, the best of the best of the collections. Right? There is nothing considered, in my opinion, on Bitcoin higher or more highly regarded than the Bitcoin Shroom collection. So to me, this is a lovely reminder as to why I'm in this space, which is again to bring my product to market, and it is my logo is what people know me as effectively in the space as Snooptoshi. So it's a lovely collection. I'm not gonna say it is. I would be.
And
I would be
do you
missed.
have?
Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, go for it.
Well, I was going to say before we wrap up, because I know there's one final evolution in this space that we haven't touched on yet, and I don't know how up to speed you are on Odin.fun. Have you heard or played
I
around with it?
saw. Oh, yeah, it's like the pump fun, but I haven't played around with it. I saw some tokens really take off. Like, tell me about it. Like, what it, because that's actually another thing I'm curious about is sort of like these different L2s and stuff that have been coming out. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on it and these different operating systems like CatVM and stuff like that.
So it's an interesting one. Now, what I really like about what Odin.fun are doing is, sorry, I have a baby on my lap at the moment. So effectively, is they are doing something that's called sort of chain abstraction. Now, as we pointed out, there are obviously shortcomings with Bitcoin, which is 10-minute block times. Now, the reason why people love Solana so much is because, again, it was that shitcoin casino where you could come in, cash out, make your money, get in and get out. You don't have to wait. There's no hassling. There's no front running. There's no mempool sniping. It's just, you're in and you're out. And that is quite attractive to a lot of people who are in the space just to be able to have some fun. So when you take that sort of model and you try to apply it to Bitcoin, it simply doesn't work. So what Odin.fun did, where a lot of other projects had tried and failed, was the ability to add what's called the ICP, Internet Computer Protocol, that almost acts like a layer two. So what this guy's built is a platform where you go in kind of like a casino, you deposit in your Bitcoin, and you're issued your Bitcoin as as ICP, almost like it's backed one to one. Like when you go into a casino, you give them your cash, you get a bunch of chips that you're free to walk around the tables to spend. And then when you finish your gambling, you go back to the checkout, and they cash out and they give you back your cash, and you sort of walk out of there. So that's how this platform kind of works, where you turn up, you give a Bitcoin, you deposit it, and then once it's deposited, you're then issued sort of a one-for-one backed with your own BTC, this ICP token, which then allows you to transact and to trade with the speed of something like Solana, but with zero gas costs. So that allows you to have this really cool, quick, seamless experience on the platform, which is impossible to do on layer one Bitcoin. And so this platform, Odin.fun, did a very good job, better than a lot of the others out there, and has sort of proven at a point in time when no one cared about runes and ordinals, and you hear the meta that ordinals are dead and runes are dead, but the reality is it couldn't be further from the case. This guy has shown he's able to bring together sort of the Far East. He's got the traditional sort of West Ordinal community. He's got Euro. He's got everyone all interested in a piece of tech that was struggling. Many coins have multiple $1 million market caps. It's impressive to see what this chap Bob Bodley has done in such a short amount of time. And with that, we sort of started to jump in and look and explore that ecosystem and work with something called Popodens, which in fact will let me give you one last demo because I think this is the final thing we can finish on.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. So let me just grab a picture. Let's just have a look and share my screen. So we just released the other day a free-to-use AI image to video platform that is pretty awesome. I'm going to show you how we use it. So I'm just going to open this up. Let's just go over to Grok. Let's just say, and then within Grok, let's just say, draw a Viking Pepe typing furiously on a computer. And then we'll get Grok to whip us up a couple of images. Once we have these images, we go over to create.popodens.com. And you can see here, these are images that people have been adding that have then been animated using this tool, which is pretty bloody awesome. So you can sort of click on each individual one. It'll let you play the video. So these have all been generated from still images that community members have provided and then provided a prompt. So there we go. Here's that looks like a funny little Viking typing on a computer. So let's take this guy and we'll just take a little screenshot and we'll go over here and we will go over to back. And then we shall add the screenshot we've just taken and we'll give it a prompt. which I'll take the same prompt I just used from the grok generation, and we just click create animation. Now from here, we will have a brief pop-up and sending the processing. And you can sort of sit and watch it, what other people have been generating while this is happening. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds to generate one of these videos from an image. Thank you. And from there, you'll then be able to see the image that's been generated on the fly. Now, we're giving credits away for free. You just have to hop into the Telegram to request them. So I'd be very happy to offer any credits to any of your listeners that may want to mess around with some free, and I like to say the most advanced image to video tech this space has seen. But let's see what the
Dude,
live
I would
demo
love to.
shows.
I actually
Here we
saw
go.
a little bit of this, and I would love to get some credits to try some stuff out.
Absolutely. And so here you can see, based on an image, a Viking Pepe typing furiously on a computer. So again, it's fun tools that the community gets to mess around with and have fun and get more interested in AI. Why? Because I'm releasing a games console with NVIDIA that has an AI chip in it. So we want people that like Web3. I don't think I even mentioned the games console has an ASIC mining chip in there. It has a 2 terabyte SSD, so you can run a full Bitcoin node and Node client. So the operating system, when running on the hardware, then becomes its own self-contained Bitcoin device. So there's, again, many rabbit holes that we could talk about for quite some time, but I know we are limited on time. So I just wanted to finish off with that final little tidbit that, again, come and hop into the Telegram and have a little mess around with some pretty cool AI tech.
Awesome. Well, dude, we're at the hour. I can't believe how fast this hour went. To kind of, I still have a lot of questions, but to kind of finish off the podcast today, what is one thing that you want to tell people that currently are not in the Bitcoin ecosystem at all?
I mean, first of all, if you love your children, just buy Bitcoin. Secondly, if you like development, get into Bitcoin, because this is a land of untold opportunity that needs so much development and so many smart minds to come in here and start whipping this place into shape. So those are my two call to actions, I would say, and please take them to heart.
Awesome. Well, congratulations once again on everything that you've built. And for that, real quick, if people want to check out your Curve project, is there anywhere, is it, where can they like check it out? Right
Thank you.
now, there's
Yes.
no product available, right?
Well, it's interesting you say that. So the developer kit's shipping in a couple of months. So what we're actually asking for, and again, any developers listening to this, you can go and request a developer kit. There's only going to be a few hundred of them on the first run, so we're really picking who they go to. But you can go to curvereality.com. So curve and then like reality. And you can request a dev kit now. And so we'll then get back to you and we can send you the relevant information. But ultimately, yes, that is one call to action. We'd love to say anyone interested in XR development, be it VR or AR or AI or Web3, we do have a lovely gadget for you that is going to be about sort of $600. So it's not even going to break the bank. So do keep that in mind. And anyone building anything cool, never hesitate to reach out if you want to learn more about Bitcoin. There's nothing we love doing more than educating on this stuff.
Awesome. Well, check them out, guys. Thank you once again for coming on, Snooptoshi. What an awesome call. I've learned a lot here. And now I'm even more excited to talk to Beat Blocks tomorrow after your praise for them. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Very
thank
best of
you.
luck. And
Thank you.
well, break a leg, I should say. And thanks for having me. And look forward to the next one.
No problem. Thank you guys, and thank you all for tuning in. I'll catch you all tomorrow. See you guys.